Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about my near-death experiences as well as my healing journey and what it was like to access emergency medical services with a mask exemption in Toronto, Canada in February and April 2021. I'm going to talk about mask mandates and more, as well as some of the things I believe we can do to consciously co-create the reality we desire to see in this world. I'm going to start by telling you the story of my first near-death experience. On January 31st, 2021, I almost died by choking. I was in my kitchen and I had just finished eating when it happened. My throat completely slammed shut and I couldn't breathe. It was one of the scariest experiences I ever had and the closest to death I have ever been. Most people would describe this as an anaphylactic reaction, except it would seem mysterious as I don't have allergies, and the foods I had just eaten, I'd eaten many times before without any issue. While I was in serious distress, trying to figure out how to breathe, I thought about calling 911, but I couldn't speak. I was home alone, and I remember thinking, I'll be dead before they arrive. I'm not sure how much time went by, but it was at least a minute or more. A lot went through my mind while I was trying to figure out how to breathe again. I eventually prayed for angelic help as I did not believe it was my time to go. Then finally, my throat opened up, and I was able to breathe again. That experience was shocking and traumatic, and I had post-traumatic stress symptoms as a result. In the days that followed, I experienced pain in my lungs, my tongue became swollen and was swollen for days, which felt very strange. I had difficulty eating, my sleep was completely messed up, I couldn't sleep, I had bouts of high anxiety and periods where I felt my throat closing up. 2 nights later, when I was in serious distress with some of these symptoms and trying to calm myself, I thought about calling 911. I checked in with my intuition and I saw that I did not need to call 911, but I went against my intuition and I ended up calling them anyway. After the paramedics arrived, I realized why my intuition had advised me against calling 911. One of the paramedics who seemed to take the lead and did all the talking refused to enter my home unless I wore a mask or a visor, and this was after I told her about my mask and visor exemptions. I got really angry by how she was treating me, and I directed them to leave if they couldn't do their job unless I wore a mask. After telling them this, she then invited me into the ambulance to take a look at me. Upon entering the ambulance, she still tried to get me to wear a visor, which was annoying, and I reminded her that I'm exempt from wearing a visor as well. While in the ambulance, I eventually started to calm down as the other paramedic was really calm and seemed really kind. They didn't seem to be concerned about my tongue, which was swollen, but they recommended I go to the hospital. However, the lead paramedic, who had all this anxious energy, told me there was no way I'd be able to go to the hospital without wearing a mask. She said that the hospitals were that strict and did not allow mask exemptions. Given that information and that it appeared I had incurred more stress as a result of calling 911, I decided not to go to the hospital. After that encounter with the paramedics, the veins in my left arm started to pop and felt very uncomfortable. I noticed I had developed thrombosis in my left arm. I decided I was going to heal my symptoms using my intuition and all of my therapeutic healing tools, and I set a strong intention that I was going to heal as quickly as possible. I used EFT tapping, which is an energy psychology therapy, in an intensive way to heal the trauma from the choking event. While I was doing this healing work, a childhood trauma related to the choking also came to the surface, and I worked on healing that as well. I experienced some amazing breakthroughs working through these issues. A few days after the choking incident, I came to the realization that the tongue swelling I had experienced had persisted because I was having allergic reactions to the everyday foods I was eating. These were the same foods I had ingested just prior to the traumatic choking incident. This is actually how some people develop allergies, during traumatic or upsetting experiences where certain foods were in the digestive tract or present in the environment and became associated with the trauma or upset. So I applied EFT tapping to that as well, and I successfully healed the food allergies and my tongue went back to normal. During this healing process, while I was working through my issues, I didn't have much of an appetite, so I drank vegetable juices that I made every day with my juicer to avoid malnourishment. In addition to energy psychology for healing, I also practice heart breathing, meditation, visualization, sound healing, and other energy medicine techniques. I started reading books by Anthony William, the medical medium, to learn how to heal my body using food as medicine. I also received a few energy healing and sound healing sessions from friends, which also helped. Everything I'd been doing helped me feel better, and my health was continuing to improve. However, 3 weeks after the choking incident, something really upsetting happened in one of my friendships, and it knocked me down. I experienced emotional, psychological, and spiritual trauma, and my health started to decline. My thrombosis symptoms got worse. Instead of just one arm, I got it in both arms. I applied my trauma healing tools to this situation as well, but I didn't give it the attention it required for full healing. I felt really tired and exhausted, and I struggled to move forward. So instead, I decided to contain and suppress some of my emotions related to this situation, and I told myself, I'll deal with it later. I continued to push that situation away from my mind and focus on other things. I decided to do a 3-day juice fast, as this has always helped me feel better in the past. I continued to read the medical medium books, and I implemented some of his suggestions, such as drinking celery juice every morning and eating certain foods for optimal healing. This helped me feel a lot better, and soon after, my appetite for food came back. I even started to reach for comfort foods that I'd missed, like chocolate cake and cheese. But a few weeks later, I had 2 more stressful experiences happen within a week of each other that would normally have been tolerable, but I found myself becoming really upset and frustrated. I found myself ruminating about the situations, not realizing how much this was actually harming my body through the release of excessive adrenaline and stress hormones. But instead of fully addressing my emotions, I still tried to suppress them. I didn't realize at that time that my stress response was overactive from the previous traumas that I had not fully healed from. By the 4th stressful event, I started having flashbacks of the choking incident, which was an indicator to me that there were still remnants of that trauma that needed healing. My health deteriorated rapidly. It quickly got to a point where I felt like my body was dying. My intuition told me I had an aneurysm, which was scary. The thrombosis in my arms got worse. I also got thrombosis in my legs. I had issues with my thyroid, my heart. I had difficulty breathing. My body felt very uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep. I was angry, and I was scared. As a medium, I have the ability to clairvoyantly perceive energy and the truth about people, places, and situations. I remember thinking one night, I need to go to the hospital. But when I tuned into the energy of that option, I saw that it would result in more stress, and I also saw an image of a Nazi connected to the hospital, which startled me, but it was very clear that going to the hospital was a bad option. I would soon learn why I saw this vision of a Nazi connected to the hospital. The next day, which was about 2 months after the choking incident, I reached out to a healer that uses quantum biofeedback, and I began intensive sessions. The quantum biofeedback confirmed what my intuition told me, that my situation was dire. I had an aneurysm and issues with my thyroid, heart, liver, lungs, arteries, veins, blood, bones, muscles, viral issues, and more. If I'd gone to a conventional doctor, I could have been diagnosed with several health conditions, 3 or 4 autoimmune diseases, and prescribed a bunch of meds with side effects and no cure. I'm not saying all doctors would do this, but this would be a common response because of conventional doctors' training and education, which mainly focuses on pharmaceutical interventions instead of looking at treating the root causes of issues and taking holistic approaches. I've done a lot of my own research into the medical industry that I started doing back in 2004 when I was doing my master's in social work. So I know that what we call modern medicine is good for some things, but it's still in the dark about how to heal root causes of many ailments. I've also seen and heard many client stories and witnessed their suffering with health issues and how they were treated by their doctors. I wanted more than just managing my symptoms. My plan was to fully heal. I know that the body has the capacity to fully heal itself in the right environment, so my mindset was focused on that, reversing my symptoms and restoring my body back to equilibrium by addressing the root causes and taking a holistic approach. I started taking natural supplements for some of my symptoms. I went back to cleaner eating. I avoided anything stressful, and I continued to research and learn more about my symptoms and how to heal my body with the medical medium books. My goal was to start sleeping again and get my body as balanced as possible so that I could get back to addressing and healing the traumas that had triggered my symptoms. However, within those first few days, I panicked 2 times because of my symptoms, and I tried to access emergency medical care. I went onto the University Health Network website, which stated that they offered virtual emergency department visits. However, the service was not set up and not working the day I checked. I called a hospital near my home and was advised I would not be permitted to enter unless I wore a mask, and that I would need a medical note from a doctor in order to enter without a mask. I don't have a medical note and feel I shouldn't need one in order to access emergency medical care. It is discrimination to have to go through this hoop. I was not provided with any helpful information about what I could do to access emergency medical care with a mask exemption. I called Telehealth Ontario, a service that allows you to consult with a nurse over the phone. I waited 15 minutes before someone answered the phone, and I was advised that it was a 3-hour wait before a nurse could call me back. 3.5 hours later, a nurse called me, and after answering all her questions and hearing about my symptoms, she advised me to go to the emergency room at the hospital. I explained I had a mask exemption. I had already called the hospital and been refused service because of my mask exemption, and she didn't know what to tell me. She suggested I call other hospitals to see if any of them would take me. I decided to call 911 instead, since I thought maybe the paramedics could take a look at me, as I was concerned I was on the verge of death. But when the paramedics arrived, however, both of them refused to provide me with service unless I wore a mask. After I explained my mask exemptions to me, they told me that there are no mask exemptions and that I was the first person that they came across that claimed a mask exemption. They did not ask about any of my health concerns and proceeded to tell me that my condition could not be that bad if I was refusing to wear a mask. They accused me of trying to make a political statement. I know that because I can speak up for myself and I'm mentally strong, they made all sorts of incorrect assumptions about me and my state of health. I even asked them a hypothetical question. I said, if I dropped on the street due to having a heart attack right now, you're telling me you wouldn't treat me because I have a mask exemption? And they told me that they would treat me, but they would put a mask on me first, and that it was their medical opinion that I needed to wear a mask. They also told me that no hospital in Canada would allow anyone in without a mask. I knew at this point that the vision I had the day before was connected to these paramedics, and that it didn't matter what I said because they would continue to refuse to treat me. In the vision, I saw Nazis walking towards me, which at first startled me. I was like, why are Nazis walking towards me? But after they approached me, all they did was talk at me. They couldn't really see me, and they weren't listening to me. That's exactly what happened and what the paramedics were like. The paramedics showing up as Nazis in my vision is a metaphor showing me the level of consciousness they were operating at, that they were psychologically manipulated into believing a lie about masks, the lie being that masks work. They were strict followers and enforcers of government rules, even though the rules are nonsensical and cause harm. They showed no compassion. They demonstrated zero ability to understand my mask exemptions when I explained it to them. It's like I was speaking a foreign language they didn't understand, and they made no effort to understand me. This is very concerning behavior for frontline workers that are supposed to help people in medical distress. Our governments allow mask exemptions for medical reasons and human rights reasons, but they are very quiet about this because they don't want you to know about your rights. I claim both medical and human rights exemptions. However, under the law, I don't have to tell anyone the reasons for my mask exemptions. In actuality, we are all exempt from wearing a mask under the Human Rights Code, given that masks are useless at preventing or protecting from the transmission of COVID. I have never worn a mask because I intuitively knew from the beginning that they don't work and that they are a symbolic form of oppression that cause more harm physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. The thought of putting on a mask brings up anxiety within me because I know what they represent. When I did my research into masks, it confirmed my intuitions. I saw expert scientists, doctors, and clinicians presenting research and showing how masks don't work and cause more harm. You don't need to take my word for it. I created a list of resources to help you with your research so you can see for yourself. I titled the resource list, Learn the Truth About COVID-19, resources that can empower you to make informed decisions. And you can find the link to the resource below the video. It's disturbing to me that our governments and some medical practitioners like these paramedics would try to force me to wear a mask when it's already been proven that masks don't work and cause more harm. Wearing a mask actually increases your chances of getting sick. Why does the government continue to mandate or promote the use of masks when it's been proven that they don't work and cause more harm? When it came to these paramedics, I realized I was better off not getting stressed about the situation because I was so fragile and did not want to aggravate my already dire symptoms. I walked away from them, realizing that I had to take my health into my own hands in a more profound way, instead of trying to access a medical system that's completely inaccessible. The discriminatory hospital policies and behavior of the paramedics acting like mask Nazis is a reflection of our broken and corrupted medical system and the government's tyrannical response to COVID. Despite the inaccessibility of our medical system, I still tried to access emergency medical care a few days later. I had already been making changes to improve my situation, but one night I went into a state of panic about my symptoms and I called 911 again. This time I had a friend help out in case I ended up with rude paramedics. I tuned into the energy and I saw it was going to be a healing experience with these paramedics, but a part of me was doubtful because of my past experiences. However, my intuition was right. I got two guys that were phenomenal. They were kind, compassionate, respectful, and professional. My vitals were good, which told me that I was on the right track with my healing path, and it gave me hope. The paramedics told me that I could go to the hospital to get examined, but reiterated what past paramedics have said about hospitals being super strict and not allowing mask exemptions. They suggested I might be better off consulting with a doctor outside of hospital. Well, I didn't go to a doctor for some of the reasons I've already mentioned, and I didn't want to deal with the added stress of trying to find the right one, especially with all the restrictions in place. One of the reasons why my body completely collapsed was because I had suppressed my emotions instead of dealing with them. Unresolved trauma and repressed emotions contribute to physical symptoms and disease within the body. The body is resilient, but it can handle only so much stress and repressed emotions before it starts calling our attention with physical symptoms so that we can make changes and shift to a healing and more empowered path. I've healed emotional and physical issues in the past without the help of any doctor, but had never experienced the severity of symptoms the way I did this year. So I'm so grateful I was divinely guided to the medical medium books and information because it saved my life in many ways. I learned from the medical medium how to use food as medicine and natural supplements, which created more balance in my body so that I could work on the deeper traumas and emotional issues, which I knew was key to fully healing myself. In addition to the medical medium information, I healed myself using my intuition and spiritual guidance, as well as my energy psychology and energy medicine tools and quantum biofeedback support. 2 months later, I reversed quite a number of my symptoms. If I had gone to see a doctor, my diagnosis could change week to week because of my symptom reversals. Now it's mid-July and I'm feeling so much better and more like myself. It's been a bumpy road to wellness, but it's a lot smoother now, thankfully, and I'm so grateful for my body's self-healing abilities. I'm not 100% yet. I still have some physical symptoms, but I continue to improve and I'm on the path to reversing all of my symptoms and experiencing myself as fully healed. There were a few themes emerge in the emotional healing work I did. One of them is that I was unsupported by people and systems I was expecting or hoping would support me, despite my intuition showing me otherwise. It's not always easy to trust and follow our intuition, especially when it conflicts with social norms or tells us something we wish weren't true. However, I was reminded and shown that my intuition always leads me on the right path for my healing and my highest good. It was a blessing in disguise that I was rejected by our broken medical system because I turned back to my own inner resources as well as external resources that really did support me and empower me to fully heal and become even healthier than before. It's pretty clear that our corrupted medical system could use some serious reform. It was shocking to me that all of the hospital resources were focused around a virus that has a 99.9% survival rate for the majority of the population. Plus, there are already safe and effective treatments available for COVID, which makes the experimental jab a total waste of taxpayer money and completely unnecessary. Our government's response to COVID is so dark and disturbing. They have allowed themselves to be psychologically manipulated by the big pharma mafia, leading them to be super spreaders of misinformation related to COVID. The fact that Health Canada has allowed the experimental jab to be used under emergency order is a reflection of big pharma mafia's influence over Health Canada and health policy. And what they're doing is completely unethical and an assault on humanity. The experimental jab has not gone through adequate safety trials. People are not receiving informed consent. They're not aware that they're actually participating in the largest drug trial in human history, and they're not aware of the real risks involved. Are you aware how many people have been injured by this experimental jab that they're pushing on us and repeatedly telling us it's safe? According to CDC's Adverse Events Reporting System, as reported by Children's Health Defense, the U.S. has had over 463,000 reports of adverse events following COVID vaccines, including over 48,000 serious injuries and almost 11,000 deaths between December 14, 2020 and July 9, 2021. According to Health Canada's Adverse Events Reports as of July 9, 2021, there have been 9,615 adverse events reports following COVID vaccines, including 2,222 that were considered serious and 134 deaths. I've heard many reports of people experiencing adverse events following the experimental jab and their doctors denying it could be related to the jab and doctors not reporting it as an adverse event as they're supposed to. So these numbers are actually lower than what they would be if there were accurate reporting. Why are we not hearing about vaccine injuries in the mainstream news? Why are you not being informed that your chances of getting sick increases by taking the experimental jab compared to not taking it at all? And they're pushing the jab on children who are the least affected by COVID, making children wear masks in schools, which is completely unnecessary. This is child abuse and a child protection issue. Children are experiencing injuries that could have been avoided by not wearing masks and not taking the experimental jab. These are really challenging times. Doctors, healthcare practitioners, and human rights advocates have been speaking out and raising red flags about the government's response to COVID being unscientific and causing more harm to the public. But these doctors and advocates are being censored, vilified, or ignored by the mainstream. Doctors are even being deplatformed from social media sites for talking about their experiences with their patients. Why are doctors being silenced and censored? Why are you not hearing about it in the mainstream news? Why do you only have access to one narrative in the mainstream? Our governments have been using psychological warfare to foster a pandemic of fear and ignorance related to health and wellness. They've been trying to keep people in a state of fear and misery by coming up with names for new variants and other scare tactics to manipulate people into taking the experimental jab and comply with nonsensical rules. Now they're trying to manipulate people into thinking that unvaccinated people like me are a threat. This is sick government propaganda and completely nonsensical. This is psychological warfare designed to incite fear, hate, confusion, and division. Last year in May, I channeled a message from my spirit guides about the virus we're dealing with today. I've included some links below if you want to read the message or hear me share the full message in a video. Basically, fear is the virus and the biggest threat we've been dealing with throughout this entire pandemic. You have less access to your rational mind when you're focused on fear-based thinking. You can literally make yourself sick by focusing on your fears. Our survival depends upon our ability to release our fears and tune into loving states of consciousness and engage with ourselves and each other from a place of love and kindness. I believe humanity is being called and challenged to recognize the fear-based government propaganda about COVID and variants, as well as the internal fears this incites, and use this as an opportunity to release your fears so you can rise above them. Raise your awareness and consciousness and recognize that you are a powerful and resilient human being. When you release your fears, you're able to think clearly and rationally and can easily recognize your resilience and power. When you heal your fears, you invite in more love, peace, and joy, and naturally expand your ability to love others. I know we all want to live in a loving society, except for the big pharma mafia groups that are trying to control the world's population through fear. People and communities thrive in a loving society. We can make this happen together. There is a growing movement worldwide of people standing up for their human rights and freedoms and saying no to the government's oppressive COVID measures. Except you're not hearing about it in the mainstream news because the news is being funded by the governments and big pharma who don't want you to see that the world is waking up and saying no to the oppression being inflicted under the guise of a COVID response. I refuse to participate in the government's medical experiment, and I choose to stand up for my rights and your rights to health and medical freedoms. If you want, you can also say no to the harmful measures. You can stop wearing a mask, and if necessary, state you have an exemption, as we are all exempt under the Human Rights Code. You can say no to the experimental jab. If you want, you can say yes to the jab, but please inform yourself of the risks so you know what you're getting yourself into. If your work or school says you need the experimental jab, this is a human rights violation, and you can say no. You can do your research and stand up for your rights to health and medical freedom and connect with like-minded people. There's a lot of us. We have the power to transform our governments and cultivate a loving society by saying no to the unlawful and unjustified measures being inflicted upon us. We can stand together united and demand that our governments do better and be better. We are co-creators of our reality. It is up to us to collectively change the present situation and manifest the future we desire. What reality do you want to create? I invite you to visualize and imagine the world you want to live in and put your energy towards that to make it happen. I'm imagining a world where our governments do their due diligence and their own research before making major decisions impacting the health and wellness of its citizens. I'm imagining a world where our governments and mainstream media provides a platform for all perspectives so that people have access to well-rounded information when making decisions about what's best for them. I'm imagining a world where our public healthcare system is completely reformed so that people receive informed consent about vaccines and have access to naturopathic doctors and other medical and healthcare practitioners that offer holistic approaches to health and healing. I'm imagining a world where our governments respect its citizens and personal sovereignty, where our governments are honest and reflects the diversity of our society. I'm imagining a world where people respect each other and the planet, and a world where there is more peace, love, light, and compassion among people and nations. What reality do you want to create? Let me know in the comments below. I care about your health and wellness and living in a loving, free, and peaceful society. You are much more resilient than you've been led to believe by the mainstream. I created a list of resources to empower you with knowledge so you can learn the truth about COVID-19 and make informed decisions about your health and wellness and that of your family. You can find the link to this resource below the video. After learning about my views, a friend told me they were concerned I was associating with extreme right political groups. That comment showed me that they're under the hypnosis of the government's propaganda. This government has created all sorts of false labels about people like me and the health and medical freedom movement, and they've been doing this to discourage you from actually questioning the narrative and doing your own research. That's why you're not hearing any other perspectives in the mainstream. Since when is being educated about masks, vaccines, and health and wellness extreme? To be clear, I'm not affiliated with any political parties or extremist groups. I'm pro-health and wellness, pro-education and informed consent, pro-empowerment, pro-choice, and pro-freedom. I am available to support you during these challenging times with spiritual guidance or help with managing and healing distressing emotions. If you are struggling with emotional or physical health issues, know that it is possible to heal the root causes and experience freedom in your body and mind. Everyone's situation is unique. Symptoms are meaningful, and there are many ways to heal. Sometimes it's not easy to know the right next steps on your healing journey because of fear, social conditioning, and other people's opinions. I can help you access more of your intuition and spiritual guidance around this. If you are interested in receiving my support, I invite you to schedule an intuitive reading or an intuitive wellness coaching session with me on my website. I've included links to those below as well. Thanks for listening and watching this video. I'm sending you so much love and blessings. Ciao for now.